Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to another episode. We are joined by Mr. Paul Raker and my homegirl B as usual. And Mr. Ben
Everybody.
is actually giving us a cameo again.
Wow, showing face.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Ben. Welcome back, Paul.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
As we say, Mr. Ben is the minority.
This group minority, a redhead.
A redhead minority.
The redhead. The
Right.
redheaded stepchild.
Stepchild.
And tonight's
So, yeah.
episode is a Pride episode. We want to celebrate the month of Pride. We want to celebrate everybody who we know within that community. And so we decided to bring Paul on as a guest because we decided that we'd like to have Paul educate everybody on what Pride means and also what it means to him as well. So, yeah, I hope that summed it up. Did that sum it up right there?
I think so. I'm a bad educator, though. I mean, I can tell you what it means to me, but the history piece is something that I'm still learning too. So,
Right, as we all are.
Like I said, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to listen.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk.
Well, thank you for that good kind of summary, B. So kind of the first question, especially during this time, it definitely is a big thing that's happening in the Black Lives Movement. So what similarities do we see between what's happening now with the Black Lives Movement to maybe what the LGBTQ plus community has gone through to get even to where they are today? There's still lots of progress to still be made, but I think when you ask some people, they might feel that there are differences between the two, and there are a lot of similarities. So what are some things that you guys see that maybe are shared between the two movements or the two communities?
was that directed at me first or the hosts?
Go for
Yeah,
it.
go ahead. Go ahead, Paul.
So I think for me, the answer has two parts. You know, I think the first thing is that there are a lot of parallels in terms of the reason why we celebrate Pride was because of protests at Stonewall, which is the gay bar that's in my virtual background there in New York City back in the 60s when police were literally raiding gay spaces because we weren't allowed to exist, you know, in those spaces. And so that piece of it parallels, I think, what we're seeing today, just in terms of the fact that it was started by protests and riots. It was started by Black trans females as well. And so I think that's important when we look at the people who are really spearheading the riots today. The second piece of it is that I think being myself and coming out as a gay white man, I recognize that my slice of the community, my slice of the LGBTQ community has a long way to go. I think there's a lot of racism within our own community that we have to call out and weed out. And I think that the events of the last few months have really convicted me to do that more often because I feel like it's something that I see too much of as a gay man, and the way that the gay male community itself others other people, whether it's by body image or skin color or economic status. I feel like I see that more and more, you know, and so it's really convicted me to call that out. And so I think there are parallels. I think there's also a call for work to be done by people who look like me to make sure that our struggle is a shared struggle, if that makes sense. And it's not us versus them. And so we need to be a more welcoming community ourselves. And so those are the two things that I sort of see in terms of parallels between what's going on today and what happened back then and why we celebrate Pride.
Nice. So
I'm glad you cleared up that Stonewall thing because I was like, Stonewall Jackson? Oh, Stonewall. Okay.
Not that Stonewall.
Okay, good. All right, so we can move on, Mr. Ben.
And we got which Stonewall we're talking about. Um,
Yeah.
so I know B. I know you've hung on a lot with Paul, especially when it comes to going out into DC and things like that. So what are some of your favorite places that you guys have gone together, whether it be gay bars, straight bars, who know bars, and have they been actually able to stay open during or be able to reopen during everything that's happening right now?
You know what? I have no idea if these places are open or not, but I know.
Well, I don't go to straight bars, so.
I know that me and Paul have been to a few of the Pride baseball games for sure. And so I feel like that's like a time where me and him, we have our normal like get together, right? You have your, I want to say, I hate to say yearly get together, but you have your normal, you already know for sure you're going to this event with this person. So every year, well, not every year, but at least for the past 2 or 3 years, me and Paul have gone to Pride games and been able to have so much fun there. I feel very welcome within that community, and as well as just like, it's just so fun. Yeah. Last year, I remember when we sat in our seats, we had a couple, I believe it was a couple behind us, right, Paul? And I know by the end of the night, yes, we ended up being super inebriated. How about that?
Yeah. We all were, but
probably being in a picture with us, but it was so fun. And so me and Paul also have experienced other things together, of course, but we went to this one bar together, and we were actually probably able to get more intimate, a little bit closer, because we were the only two in that bar at the time. So I feel like that's when I got the closest to Paul, to be able to open up to him and he get to know me a little bit more, but I'm getting to know him a little bit more because he's also able to talk about things that he probably wouldn't be able to talk about with others, because he's in the setting of his home setting, right? I don't know.
Nice. Another fun thing that was kind of just brought to my mind, because I feel like while you were answering that question about getting closer to Paul, Herb, I thought when you said intimate with Paul, I thought Herb was kind of like, oh, okay, like
I was thinking that, but I was like, they were at a bar, so I don't know if they got intimate. But
it wasn't that kind of bar.
I'm just saying, look, I've been all over the world, so not.
Well, there are those kind of gay bars, but this wasn't one of them.
Okay. No, this wasn't one of them. No.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, go ahead.
My actual favorite time, I actually had a lot of fun. I was living in Brooklyn, New York, and I was working at Macy's, and we had two gentlemen that decided, like, hey, one day they wanted to take me out. They were like, hey, Herb, you should come with us to this place. And at first I kind of knew one of them was, gay, and then the other gentleman was, I didn't know what he was. So he was like, yeah, let's do it because it'll be fun. And I was like, oh, whatever, I like to go have some drinks, and I like reggae music. It was a reggae night at the spot, so I was like, yeah, cool. So I get there. It was a great time. I'm having fun, and then the other gentleman leaves, and then the one guy stays, and there were two other guys there, and they thought that they could come and say hi to me, and hit on me. I was actually flattered, because at first I was like, nobody's talking to me. Then all of a sudden, about midnight, then a couple of guys were like, hey, what's up? And I'm like, hey, what's up? So because I was there, I was there for like a couple of hours, so they must have been like, okay, he must be. So they walked up. I didn't have any problem with it. I was like, thanks, I'm flattered. I kind of feel good now because I've been here for an hour and nobody hit on me. I was like a little bit shocked. I was like, I thought, I was a good looking guy, and then, but they were
And they
nice,
did
and
too.
they were very polite after I told them that I wasn't, but they were like, oh, then don't worry about it. I was like, yeah, but it's cool, I like reggae music, I'm just gonna stand over here and dance. They wanted me to come to the dance floor, but I was like, I'm just
Yeah.
gonna stand over here and dance. And I had a good time though. It was the best. It was the best night I've had in a very long time since I was living in Brooklyn for like a couple of years. And I think it's the coolest thing. I don't have any problem with it. I told them myself. I was like, look, man, you know, doesn't that makes more women for me? So I don't have a problem with y'all. So they were really nice guys, though. We went out to eat afterwards, and that's when I really got to know more about it and how, in actuality, a lot of times they get, picked on in a way where you think it's like, what is wrong with people? Why are you worried about this person? If they're not going to be, they're not attracted to you if you're acting like that. So
Yeah.
why do you bother with feeling uncomfortable when it's not about you? You know what I'm saying? It's a little bit concerning to me because it's almost like the whole seeing a black man in the neighborhood and going, oh, why is he here? And it's like, what's the big deal? It's like they're not coming here for you.
Yeah.
They're just walking through the neighborhood.
Right.
If you see a gentleman walking through the neighborhood, it shouldn't bother you. Why, if he's doing whatever he's doing, because it's not your thing. So
right.
That's how I feel about it, and so.
Well, I know it was an interesting almost about a year ago now. We had a meeting and a kind of a training and informal conversation at the Y about LGBTQ, just a kind of an informal setting where people can talk openly and discuss things. And I think I know talking to Herb afterwards, you said that it was really it was a great conversation. You really enjoyed having it. Unfortunately, we didn't have Paul there to lead the conversation since he is one of the chairs of the committee for our Y here in the DC area. But it was a really fun experience. And Herb, you want to talk a little bit more about your experience learning a little bit more, maybe even about somebody you share an office with, like kind of.
Yeah, I mean, I did not. I just heard of the phrases LBCA, and all of that stuff, right? And I did not know that the letters meant something in each way. I thought it was just, a unique way of just saying it. So, then, there were people, they would basically say, I am him, or I am her, or I am, whatever. And how do you identify yourself? And, people were trying, and so they would go around the room and they were asking questions. And one of my coworkers said, I am asexual. And I was like, hey, what? I was very, I was a little thrown back because I didn't know what that meant. And I was like, so I turned around, I was like, hey, you guys clue me in on stuff like this. Like, I can't be blindsided and, told like, when I'm friends with you, I want to know everything about you. So like, it just threw me for a loop. And she was like, I'm asexual. I don't know what that meant at the time. And I was like, whoa, what? So, I was like, hey, you're going to tell me? But I think it means something else entirely. It's, and it just, yeah. So, if Paul could really elaborate on all the letters for us, that would be actually great.
Well, I don't want to bore you.
No, I want to know.
No, that's not boring us at all. Please.
At all.
Please explain for the viewers and the listeners.
Well,
what does it mean?
So I think the most interesting thing for me, and when I do the training that you guys are talking about being in, one of the things that I always point out is that the reason why we have the plus sign at the end of all the letters is because there is more than just what you see. I think if you look back probably 20, 30 years ago, it was just LGB, which is lesbian, gay, bisexual.
Right.
We've added the T, and I think we'll probably get a chance to talk about that, I think, a little later on. The transgender community is something that's in the news right now. And another thing that I think the L and the B and the G are working on sort of accepting and welcoming. We're all on that journey and learning more. But there are a number of letters thereafter. Some apply to gender identity, which essentially deals with everything up here in terms of what you feel like you are, the gender that you feel like you are. Some of them deal with sexual orientation, which is who you are attracted to. When Herb talks about his office mate, asexual essentially means that you are not sexually attracted to anything. That doesn't mean that there's not an emotional attraction. Asexual people still date people and they seek an emotional connection, but when it comes to physical attraction, they don't feel that. Towards any type of gender or person or anything. And so there's a lot of learning. I think the thing that I always point out to people with the letters, because even I get confused about what goes where and in what order, there's a lot of learning to do, I think, on all of our parts. And there's a lot of evolving. The letters themselves have evolved. Like I said, that's why we put the plus sign at the end, because there's even more than what we talk about. And there will be more, down the road. And so I think it's what I always want people to know when I'm doing that type of training is to decide to learn, something new. And so I was encouraged by that story, and that, somebody in the room found out something new, whether it was about a coworker, just about that particular subject in general. We all have learning to do. And so I'm appreciative of the letters, if for nothing more, just the education piece for me too, but also for other people.
So,
can I add some letters? Do you
want to add some?
Yeah, I want to add BBM.
What is that?
Broke black man.
Real specific part.
Yeah.
I'm definitely
I'm in
dated in that demographic.
Yes.
So, for me, I think it's an amazing community to see how much joy and how much fun the LGBT community have, and I think a big time period for that is this month. And there's a big celebrations that happen across this country, across the world, and most are just known as Pride festivals. So, have the collective group here? Have you guys? What cities or what areas have you celebrated Pride in before, and how would you compare it to maybe what we see here in DC, if you've experienced it elsewhere? Bianca, how about you?
Okay.
I don't think I've ever experienced it outside of Washington, D.C. I've only experienced it being down on DuPont Circle in the parade. I was in the parade one year, and being in the parade was like an experience that I would want everyone to experience. It was like, it was crazy. And also, I was also 1 year or a few years just on the side, being like a person watching the parade happen, getting beads thrown at, also waving at everyone, getting to see actual people in the community come together, whether it was a church, whether it was a center for help for AIDS. What's the Walter Reed Center? There you go. That's the name I was looking for. I mean, giant, all kinds of just different places coming together to just celebrate the LGBTQ community. So I don't know. It's been fun celebrating in DuPont. I want to celebrate in Reston. thought I was going to be able to this year. I guess I can't, but hopefully we'll be able to sometime this year if they're going to actually follow through with their change date, and if not, then definitely next year. But having fun in DuPont, where they celebrated the best, I feel like, has been super fun. And I've celebrated with Paul, and I've been pretty lit probably from the moment that we met up.
So to piggyback on that, I was in Rehoboth Beach 2 years ago, and so we were all there, a bunch of friends, and we were just looking for a bar to go have some drinks, and we happened upon one of the bars down on the main strip, and we were like, oh, this place looks cool. So the women chose it, and we walked in, and we did not realize that they were about to do a show. And so one of my homeboys heard this song come on, and he got all excited. He was like, oh yeah, this is my jam. He walks out on the floor, and they were like, hold up, honey. This is for somebody else. So they pushed him back. He was all upset because he was like, oh, this is my jam. Like he was about to throw down, and they were like, no, this is not for you. This is for our show. And then, one of the trans came out and did a show for it, which was really cool. I think we had a lot more drinks that night too, because they like to party, man. Like they
that will
like to
happen
have
in
some
a gay
drinks.
bar.
Yeah, they were having
love
some
to drink.
drinks. Yes, it was cool.
Drag queens are some of the most fun individuals I've ever been around.
Yeah, and it's like carnival on steroids.
Yeah,
it's just great. Like I have a good time every time. Mine was in New York, Soho, where I witnessed it for the first time, and I was like blown away how much fun they had, and how like welcoming because I mean they knew there were people out there that weren't gay, but like they didn't have a problem with them, which in turn other people shouldn't have a problem, but we always seem to encounter that. And being a black man, I think I relate more to it because of what I go through as a black man every day.
Yeah.
As to the discrimination of the LGBT, I can't even use the letters anymore, but I feel like I've had a few drinks tonight myself. But
well,
just
form all the letters.
Yes. So, it's mind-boggling how in 2020, we're talking about this, and it's still a kind of a issue in some circles.
Yeah. Well, that's why in the first question, I mean it, and I try to tell everybody possible that our struggle is a shared struggle. They run parallel, and I want more people in my community to see that. Because I think we can work together on these things, because I think that they are similar.
Right.
And the more that we learn that in terms of our strength as a unit, the LGBTQ community and the Black community, and all communities of color, we've all had that shared struggle, and for us to come together will make us stronger. And so that's what I want. It starts with us, though, because like I said, I'm calling out the gay white men too, in my answer to the first question, because we're doing the wrong types of things in our own community. I don't want to see that, because I feel like we we have and are going through the same thing, and there's strength
Struggle,
in
yes.
number. Yeah.
Yep. Which is very interesting to me because I feel like if you know that how hard it was for you to come out to your family or anything like that, like you would think that you would sympathize, or I guess sympathizing is not really the way you should use the word, but you would empathize with somebody that goes through the same issues, whether they be black, white, Hispanic, or any other ethnic background. Like, you shouldn't look at them in a different way because that's showing a little bit of racism and prejudice at the same time.
Yeah.
So with that, do you guys, when it comes to, either where you work, I know we all obviously work for the same organization, so maybe businesses are a better question, but do you take into consideration their stance with LGBTQ rights for individuals when you give them your business, when you spend money at their locations, or do you try to be, conscious of those things? Just like I know right now with the Black Lives Matter movement, everyone is talking about, keeping the dollar in, Black communities and trying to, support them in a monetary way. So are you guys trying to be conscious of that with the LGBTQ community as well right now?
Yes. So
I think it's all of the above for me.
yeah,
Sorry.
I
Yeah.
I feel like I'm trying to do both, of course, right?
Yeah.
Support or not support places that don't support the LGBTQ community because, at work we are right next to Chick-fil-A, right? So how hard is it that every day we smell this delicious piece of fried chicken,
Mm-hmm.
but in your soul that they are terrible for their beliefs, right? For what they believe in towards that community. So, you just kind of just have to keep it moving. You just got to know what to do. And especially when it comes to supporting businesses, you got to make sure that you support the right businesses, whether it's for that community, the Black Lives Matter. I mean, supporting Black communities, it's not many, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, but in Reston, I mean, it's kind of hard to shop Black. So,
yeah, it is. That,
to me,
and sometimes a lot of them don't even,
you can
put
do
the
it.
sign up. Yeah. A lot of them just open a business. They don't really necessarily say black owned or
Yeah,
stuff
right?
like
Like, you
that.
don't
You just
know, you don't know, right? So,
yeah.
I'm going to give you an example, like the Reston Farm Market, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I went online, I looked at it, and I was like, oh, this is like, and I could be wrong too, this is like either part joint Black owned or it's Black owned.
Right, right, exactly.
But like when you go there, you don't necessarily get that feeling. When I first went there, but now I totally see that they are super diverse, and like everybody is there, and like I feel like it's super family owned, and I love that place. That's why I keep going back there. But like I had to do some research to find out about it, so
Yeah.
it's kind of hard in our area. But if I lived in DC, where I lived before, oh, I definitely would be super into trying to live only within the Black community and shop only with the community. It would be a bit easier, I feel like. So for me, I do a lot of online shopping when it comes to the Black community. So our new logo that's coming out, but that we're going to start using, it was produced by one of my old high school friends. So that's a Black-owned graphic designer right there.
Awesome.
But just trying to do that, trying to support. So
Trying our best.
Paul, how about you?
So I think that I've definitely become more conscious of it in the last few years, and especially the last couple of months. To use Bianca's example, it is not always possible for me to walk by the fried chicken place that is close by. They have
Mm-hmm.
delicious food. I think the struggle is that
Yeah.
they have delicious food.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Correct.
That's the struggle.
But at the
Hard,
same
right?
time,
The
I
food
do
is so good.
understand that, you know, you speak with your wallet, you know, and
Yep.
that means a lot. And so that's in the back of my mind as well. So it's a struggle though, you know, because in this particular instance, the product is also good, you know.
Right.
And there's a separation, I think, between local franchises and the national brand, and maybe that's something I tell myself to justify eating the chicken. I don't know, but sometimes I tell
Yeah.
myself that too.
Right.
But yeah, I've definitely become more conscious of trying to be more intentional about who I support and why I support them and where I spend my money. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a convenience factor, and there is a quality of the product factor, and then there is a what are they doing with my dollars when I spend them there factor too. So all that has to be taken into account, and it's hard sometimes, but also necessary to the points that have been made.
Nice. So now I would like to take a little bit deeper dive just to get for our viewers and audience to get to know you, Paul, since we have you on for this Pride episode. You know, obviously answer at your level of comfortableness, but at what age did you come out to your family and friends? Did it happen at the same time? Was there a huge gap in between the two?
Oh, I'm not gay. No, I'm just kidding.
Was it a cookout?
Cookout. Oh, okay, I am gay, and I just came out just on this show. Breaking news.
Breaking news. I wouldn't have known.
All jokes aside, when people ask me about it, and I'm an old queen now. I'm very old. It's been a long time since I came out of the closet. But by modern day standards, I was still a late bloomer. I came out of the closet when I was 19 years old. I had been dating a guy for probably 6 months or so before I came out. He was a drag queen at the only gay bar / club that was anywhere close to where I grew up, which was still 45 minutes away. And the gays that grew up in rural America will understand that, but that's foreign to us here, you know. So that's in a nutshell how we met. And so I came out when I was 19 years old. I tell people all the time, it's still the hardest thing I ever did. I was raised in a very conservative part of the country in the South, and my grandfather was a Baptist preacher. I went to Christian school my entire life from the time I was in kindergarten till 12th grade. I was in Independent Baptist Church, very active. My family was, obviously, with my grandfather's history and past. And so it was difficult, you know, because I was raised in a bubble to be taught that it was a, you know, unpardonable sin. I was going to hell, you know. But at the same time, I knew who I was. I knew what and who I was attracted to. I knew what my feelings were. And to say I'm gay to my dad, who's the first person I came out to, was far and away the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, you know.
Wow.
And he's still not 100% on board. I mean, I was 19 then. I'm real old now. I don't know if I should say how old I am on a podcast.
No, that's quite all right. But
So
when you say go ahead.
No, you go ahead. It sounds like you
I
have
said
a follow-up question.
Well, because when you say he's still struggling with it, like,
Yeah.
is he just not fully understanding, or is he just, you know, are you his only boy? Is that, you know,
Yeah.
that type of stuff? Well, okay.
Yeah, so all of those things. I am his only son. I am also his namesake. I'm named after he and my grandfather.
Okay.
I'm the last male in the lineage. If I don't have kids, there's not going to be another Raker. I think all
Another
of that
Raker.
plays into his
Yes.
thought process. But you add on top of that the way that he was raised and that I was raised and that he still believes is that being gay is a sin. It's not something that you're born with. And so even though his own flesh and blood is standing in front of him as a 19-year-old after dinner, which is how I came out, he still has problems, getting his head around that, to the point that I don't know, when the time comes for me to get married, I don't know if he'll be there. He hasn't met any. I've been in 2 serious relationships in my life, and he hasn't met either one of them.
And that's what I was wondering.
Those things are things that hurt me, but that I have sort of, as a more mature adult now, sort of accepted and moved on from, and refuse to let that stand in the way of living in my own truth and being who I am, Yeah. And so that's the hardest part of my coming out story, is that he's the first person I came out to and probably the least accepting. The flip side of that is that I do have supportive people in my family. My mom, my sister, the large majority of my immediate family have all been 100% supportive, through the whole journey. And so I'm grateful for that, because I've certainly met and been around people who haven't had even that. I feel like I have the best and worst of both worlds. I think I'm jealous of the generation now that's being able to come out and be themselves much earlier. Like I said, 19 was a late bloomer at that time. It is super late now. It's almost old man status. So I'm jealous of folks who are able to come out and be themselves earlier, whether it's in different parts of the country or with different parents with different mindsets. And I'm hopeful that will continue to change, that the age of people who come out and are able to be open and affirmed as who they are is much younger. I'm hopeful for that. So I say all that to say I'm grateful for the best of both worlds, with my coming out story.
So is there nothing that you would, looking back, want to change your story or your experience, maybe, earlier in a different setting? Is there anything that you'd want to, or, have you kind of now come to terms with that and are happy with how things have shaped you to be the person you are?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything I would change for that reason, because I think it has shaped who I am, but I'm also thankful for the opportunity to be able to connect with people working for an organization that I feel like is far too conservative at times, and around people sometimes who I think come from that background. I'm sort of able to share my insights, what it was like and how I got to where I am today. And so I don't necessarily know that I would change anything. I think if there was one thing that, if you said you absolutely have to choose something, it would be that I would have come out sooner, because I look at the struggles that I had prior to that, whether it was something as simple as just lying about where I was going to my parents. Those things eat at you, and they create a sense of exhaustion to the point where it was either come out or something even worse. I just felt like I was so exhausted to the point where I needed to tell somebody. And so I wish I would have had that support earlier, if there's one thing. But at the same time, I feel like my experience, if I didn't have that experience, I wouldn't be able to share it, and help people who I know are still struggling. And so I don't know, if there was anything I would change specifically.
Change. Okay.
So, we know you grew up in North Carolina, and, you obviously are here in the Northern Virginia DMV area right now, working in DC actually too at times. And so is there some way somehow to ever want to or be willing to move back to North Carolina? I mean, I know the majority of your family now, it sounds like, are very supportive in things, and the shape of the country is always changing and evolving, and some states that were red are turning blue. So can you see yourself moving back to that area, or do you like staying in a more progressive area?
Yeah,
Well,
North Carolina is a complicated beast for me because I feel like to people outside of the state, it definitely has a well-deserved reputation of being extremely conservative. And the places in the state that I lived were very conservative, right up until moving up here 5 years ago. I was in one of the most conservative counties in the entire state. And so on the flip side of that, there are also parts of the state that I miss. And I think there are a handful of places that I would move back to, because I love that part of the country. It's a beautiful state. The politics are a different story sometimes. Asheville is one of the more progressive parts of the state that's absolutely beautiful. Durham is one of my favorite cities in North Carolina. I have said since moving up here, if I went back, it would be if I could live and work in Durham, just because of the progressive nature, the diverse nature of that city in particular, but that general part of the state. And so I'm always a little bit defensive when people trash talk it. I mean, I like to trash talk it because I am from there, but sure. I'm always quick to mention sort of those parts of the country, the Triangle, Asheville, Wilmington, places where there are solid higher education places, I feel like, are still beautiful places to live and diverse places to live, So
yeah,
I
there's a
would
lot
definitely
more
go
people
back one day.
retiring. Oh, man.
Yeah, maybe retirement. I don't know. When I'm older, I would go back one day. I love being in a metropolitan area. This is the first big move I've ever made up here, and so I still feel like I'm enjoying that piece of it to where I don't have to drive 45 minutes to go to a gay bar. That's very nice.
Nice. So one of the last kind of questions specifically for you that I have is, for our listeners, for our viewers, what's the next big movement or cause in the LGBTQ community that you would really like to discuss, that you would like to make sure that people are aware of, and definitely maybe feel is underserved or there isn't really a spotlight put on it, that you can maybe use this platform to try and help any way that you can.
Yeah. Well, there's a spotlight now, thankfully. I think it's been recent, and I know I mentioned it in the beginning, but for me, it really is the trans community. I feel like they're sort of integrating into the laundry list of the alphabet. And with that comes a bit of education on the parts of people like me, gay men in general, I feel like need to learn more about the plight of trans folks, and I hope that we can. I know that I am continuing to, and I think that the events of the past few weeks have shed an even greater light on it, with Tony McDade in Florida, and things like that. I'm encouraged, but I still think that we have a lot of learning to do just about the T in general, the trans community. And I'm hopeful that we will continue to do that. And so I would just encourage people to look up organizations in your towns and in the areas that you live in that support trans people, particularly trans folks of colors who are murdered and abused at a much higher rate than white folk are, people, trans folks, and see how you can get involved. I feel like the Supreme Court ruling this week was huge. There are little bits and pieces of things that have happened in the last couple of years that have really opened our eyes to the plight that trans folks have, and I hope that we'll continue to do that.
Great, thank you. B or Herb, you guys have the small business of the episode of the Pride season, the Pride time we're doing?
Well, we do, yes. It's Rest in Pride. So I wanted Paul to speak to us about what the Reston Pride community group is that's here in Reston, Virginia, because he was able to work with them a little bit during their first year of doing Pride activities in the Reston community. So I chose them because I felt like it would be only right to support them during this month. So Paul, let us know what that community group is.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to look up Reston Pride. This would have been the third annual Reston Pride. I think that they have attempted to move it back to October, and like Bianca said, I don't know if they've made a decision on that. But I was involved pretty closely in the first year and sort of from afar in the second year. It was started by the Universalist Unitarian Church in Reston, which meant a lot to me to be involved just from my religious upbringing. I wasn't a Unitarian. I wish I was. Independent Baptist. Tell everyone I'm a recovering Baptist. But it was nice to see a church involved, with the initial planning of a Pride event. The head pastor at the church has a gay son who is also a drag queen in San Francisco. He performed at the first Pride that I was involved in. So she really had a burden for when she moved to Reston, and she tells the story of, moving across the country, having a gay son, and then moving to Reston and saying, where are the gay people? That's what she always says. Every time I've ever heard her tell the story, she says, I know there are gay people in Reston. Where are they? We're too close to D.C., and, she's a very liberal Unitarian pastor. And so that really put something on her heart to do a Pride Festival in Reston. And the first year, the weather was terrible. We were moved from outdoor to indoor. There were still thousands of people who showed up. And I think that was sort of the light switch for her and for the people who were on the planning committee to see that this was something that was necessary, it was needed, and it would be, widely accepted in the community. They moved it outside to a more sexy location at Lake Ann, which I think is wonderful, last year, and it was a success. And I mean, it was really primed to be even larger this year, and I know everything's been canceled. But I'm hopeful, that it will continue to gain traction. I mean, just to see, even in suburban Washington, D.C., the type of support that we had there the first year, and the people coming by the booths and just talking to you about how necessary it was encouraging. And also to see the number of young people, at a smaller Pride that you don't always see at some of the bigger ones, for them to feel safe and supported and to come out tells me that there's definitely a need, and the fact that it grew year over year, there's a need. So there are ways to get involved. You can be on the planning committee. I was the first year. They welcome folks. I was from an organization that they did not anticipate being on the steering committee, just from some of their knowledge, I think, of how we operated. And so I was happy to educate them in that regard. But a very welcoming bunch of folks and an amazing event. It's really good. That's a very loquacious answer. God.
We loved it. I mean, no better person to explain what that group does. So thank you.
Yeah, look at that. Reston Pride.
Yes, I'll put it down here, of course, Reston Pride.
Yeah, whoever's editing this, put Reston Pride down there.
Reston Pride,
Reston Pride. Right down the bottom.
At the end, it'll always have a spotlight. Always.
Always. Yeah. It was great. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for letting us into your world. I really think that a lot of people need to kind of stop and listen, or how do you say? They say stop and smell the roses, like to understand what's going on in the world, because you probably will encounter somebody in your family that's going to be in the similar situation where you need to learn how to accept and be more open to understanding what's going on. So thanks a lot.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, good night, and thanks for joining us.
Good luck, y'all.
Good luck, y'all. But we got to go.
Bianca's been yawning since 15 minutes ago.
I have.
Yeah.
I'm so
Have a
tired.
good night.